So go ahead and take two with the person next to you, identify together. This is super important, right? We can land on 3 key ideologies, 3 things he believes about the role of government, and then a quick comparison to Hamilton and the Federalists. 2 minutes together, go for it. Dive in. 2. Your homework? No, what's your homework? That's why you're in the class. It's pretty straightforward. Good. Come back season right here. Hey, man. Come back season, man. I have 0 doubts. Stay on that track. What if I came to class today? I can't teach you guys. I have time to get ready. What if I came to class today and I was like, sorry guys, I gotta teach you now. I didn't have time to get ready. I would disappoint you? Yeah, that's exactly how I feel when you do half-ass homework. False. If I did it once, you would understand. What if I did it 4 or 5 times? You still understand? I hope not. You should hold me to a high standard. All right, stop you guys here. Now, big day today. Big day, because this is beginning of period 4. I told you guys on Thursday in class, like period 4 is the fork in the road. Period 4 is where if you've been working hard, things make a lot of sense. If you've not been working hard, you will be super lost. All right, for like our test scores, we've seen a lot of people like right there in that middle. Period 4 usually goes like this. Like the lower half drops off and the upper half goes up. So a lot of you guys are in that like 65-ish%. If you're like you guys are all between like 58 and 72 for the most part. What we'll see usually in period 4 is like a lot of people at 80 and above, and a lot of people at 40 and below. I'm telling you guys, like, honestly, this is my 7th year doing this. This is always the unit where like it divides the haves and the have-nots, the workers and the non-workers. So expect going forward to have your homework out on your desk every single day when you come to class. And what I'll start doing with that is depends. Do whatever I want with it. Right? Don't be surprised if in the near future, as we start taking this class a little more seriously, the people that don't do their homework are going to go sit in the back table, facing the wall, and just do their homework in the corner. Because you can't be successful in this class unless you do your reading. It's just the way of the world. I can't read for you. I can teach you all day. But unless you're going to do your preparation, then there's no point in me working my ass off. Don't be surprised if we have other things that I decide to do with people that just don't do their homework, which is fine, right? If you're a kid that always does their homework and you had a rough day on a Monday, or Tuesday night, or Wednesday night, and you shoot me a remind, hey, Winch, I had all these things come up, like, is it okay if I have a 1-day extension? Absolutely. Because you communicated your struggle, right? And you've built up equity, you've built up trust, right? I'll use Josue, for example. So I don't want to call anybody out in this class, right? Like, if we're in the middle of period 5 last year, and Josue texts me, he's like, hey, Winch, like I had this big church event, I didn't get home until midnight, like, is it cool if I turn the homework in on Friday? What would I tell Josue? Yeah, absolutely, right? And then he comes to class, and then I take everybody to do their homework, and I separate them to the corner, and I make them do their homework. Would I separate Josue? No, because he communicated, and he's built up trust. What I'm trying to tell you guys is most of you haven't built up anything, and you're still over here taking shortcuts. Right? And then a lot of that gets reflected then in your test scores. So don't be surprised if in the future I'm going to ask you to get your homework out, and then I may or may not decide to do something with that data. Now, I want to use Evelyn's homework. Can I see? She's obviously read her chapter, and she's answered most of the questions. What would I say to this as a response? What do you guys think I think about this? This is fantastic. Because it shows she read, she answered the questions that she could, and she's probably going to answer the other ones after I finish lecturing and things make a little more sense. This is what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for you to demonstrate that you did ahead of time your preparation. So I'm just giving you fair warning so you can't cry and bitch and moan when I put you in the corner and I make you stare at the wall and I make you do your homework. Did I not do that last year? Oh yeah. And then what happened all of a sudden?
Started doing their homework.
Oh, it's wild. People don't like to sit in the corner and be told to do their homework. So that's that. Now, period 4 gets really fun. Period 4 is when things get really, really interesting, especially if you did a good job in 2 and 3 of building that foundation. And today is the day where you start to realize, do I have that foundation or not? So first, let's talk about Jefferson. Jefferson's ideology, what he believes in. And this is, of course, pre-presidency, for those of you who did your reading. Pre-presidency. What's one thing you can say Jefferson absolutely believes in as a person pre-presidency? I'll start with you, Antonio. What does he believe in?
Jefferson believes more on like civil liberties.
Good. Civil liberties, that's a good one, my man. That's a really good one. Civil liberties, good. Nicely done, sir. What else?
Strict.
I love you, Justin. Strict interpretation of the Constitution. Okay, good, good. I like that. I like that. Felix, what else? What else does Jefferson believe in?
The common people should.
Good, good. The common man should have power, yes? Dude, my job is to teach, right? And to sometimes make fun of you. That's fine. Talk to me. What? Yeah, that's not his ideology in the role of government, though. Go.
The state having more power.
That a boy. Good job. States' rights. States being stronger, then who should be weaker if the states are stronger? Good. Good. A weak national or a federal government. Good. So today's the day where I'm going to expect a lot of choral response, which means you guys all answer at once when I ask you a simple question. So in that case, when I ask you who's weaker, everybody should be able to say the federal government. That's an easy question we should all be able to respond to. So don't be afraid to be vocal today. Don't be afraid to make noise today. Don't be afraid to engage in a conversation with me today, because that's what makes things make a little more sense. So good. I agree with this. This is a good list. How about on the economy? What does he think the government's role should be in the economy? Yeah, sure, agriculture and supporting farmers, but what does he think the government should do with the economy? Should the government regulate the economy or not? Good, good, good. So we're going to say government non-involved in the economy. Good job, guys. There we go. See, look at us. Look at us, starting period 4 on the right foot. Things are starting to make sense. It's all coming together. Everybody except Angel. It already came together for you, Angel. You're an angel. Good. Now let's compare this to Alexander Hamilton and the Federalists. What does Hamilton and the Federalists prefer instead of civil liberties? Order. Stability. Good. Strict interpretation or loose interpretation?
Loose.
Oh, check this out. Common man?
Elite.
Oh, the elite. The educated, the well-knowledged. Good. States' rights? Yeah, federal government authority. And how about the government and the economy? Yeah, that's Hamilton's baby. That's Hamilton's thing. Hamilton's financial plan is all about government regulating the economy. So is it safe to say that these two dudes are completely opposite ideologically? Yeah, I think it's fair. I think that's fair. So for today's conversation, how does it always do that? Just click in from yet? Doesn't seem to go.
Bless you.
Oh, I think it's this thing that blocks it. Cool. So today we're going to talk about Jeffersonian democracy. All right, it's an era. And this era is going to take us from Jefferson's election in 1800. And this Jeffersonian democracy era will really take us all the way to 1828. At 1828, we're going to elect Jackson. And that'll be an issue in this era called Jacksonian democracy. But for the next 28 years, we're going to be talking about a society. Don't worry, Jefferson's not president for 28 years. But him and his legacies are really going to run the country in a very Jeffersonian way. Apparently, according to this ideology. We'll see how true that is. There it goes. Your prompt is here. Take 1 minute with your partner and read it and try to identify for yourselves as a partner duo. What do I have to know or understand in order to successfully access or answer this prompt? Take a minute together, read it out loud to each other, and kind of start talking about how you answer this question. 1 minute, go. Dive in. All right, stop you guys there. So what is this? Put this question in a more simple phrase for me, please. What is this question really asking us? Kevin. Scott, yes, my bad, Kevin Scott. Yeah, what is this prompt really asking us to do?
To see how to like
You know. You're there, you got it, buddy. I bet lunch on you last week, so I expect a lot out of you. That's fine, you get something. Lopez, what do you think?
I think it's saying like how much is like the differences of the two parties, how
It's a very college boardy problem.
it's talking about the two parties and like how was like their characteristics, how accurate were their characteristics shown during the Jeffersonian.
Good. So how much do their actions match their ideals? Right? How much during this era do we actually see the Democratic Republicans following this? How much do we see the Federalists following this? That's what it's asking, right? And then I think when you understand like what it's asking you, the question becomes much easier. But it's a hard question to chew on while you figure out what the hell is this even asking me in the first place. I'm gonna freak out. All right.
You have new batteries or?
No, it's not the battery.
You're blocking.
Yeah. So, taking a step back.
White?
Yes, he's blocking the radar. Taking a step back, this election of 1800 is a huge turning point. It's called the Peaceful Revolution of 1800 because it's the first time we see a peaceful transfer of power from one party to another. But it sets up this precedent, very important, this precedent that every single election after, if you lose the election, what do you have to do? No, if you lose the election, what happens? So, yeah. What? If you're a president and you lose your campaign for re-election, what do you have to do? You leave. These are right? Like it's that simple. It's oftentimes that simple. You guys are overthinking things. But it's this precedent that like elsewhere in the world, how does power change hands? Yeah, violence, force, conflict. In this case, this election matters because it demonstrates to the world and to America that American democracy works. That like when the people change their opinion and pick a different party, then we just put that other party in power and move on with our lives. Right? And for the most part, this is held true for all of American history after that. 1860 is one discrepancy when we elect Lincoln and most of the South is like, no, we're out, we're not going to be here. Civil War. 1876 as well, talking about like the end of Reconstruction and a conflicted election there. But for the most part, after this, the party loses an election, they're like, well, that sucks. Better luck in 4 years. Bless you.
My boy Rutherford.
Your boy Rutherford B. Hayes? Here. It works when I get closer. I don't understand. All right. See, that doesn't work for me. You come back here every fucking time I have to change my slides.
Just tell me that I'll change it for you.
That's all good. I got it. I'm just very confused. Good. I'm just thinking.
Try.
All right.
Try it over.
Then it goes all at once. It's very confusing. But it only happens in this room, not the other rooms. All right. Go back. There we go. I know. So, looking at this map, this is the election map for 1800. We elect Jefferson. Take 30 seconds to the person next to you. What do you notice on this map? What is worth pointing out? We see that 1800 Jefferson wins by a lot or a little. A little. All right. So what do you notice on this map that maybe is different than what you saw in 1796 when Adams beat Jefferson by just a little bit? Take a minute to talk about your partner. What do you guys think? I should make them buy me Apple TV.
No, I love that.
I know you said it's old.
I installed it now.
Make it. Making it work. Freaking complications, man. I hate technology. All right. So what do you see up here? I heard some good things. Portillo, you can go first. What do you see? What do you notice? What's going on? Okay, good. So compared to 1796, Jefferson gets more support there. Told you.
That's supposed to be.
Yeah, it's all I was. Jefferson gets more support in the North than he had before. That's fair. Good. Good. So maybe it's fair to say the Federalists are losing some of their base. Cool. What else? What else do you notice on this map? What? The bigger states? What does that mean? Okay, good. Okay, I agree. It's kind of the ones on the coast. That's fair. Good. What else do you guys notice? Yeah, what else do you notice on this map? It's not even a history question. It's just a can you see question. The what? The southern state that's red. Okay, it's just the coast. Okay, it's reasonable. What else do you guys notice? Come on. Anybody? Talk to me. There's less sectionalism. I agree. Good job, Justin. Not what I'm looking for, though, because that was kind of already highlighted by Portillo. 2 new states. Two new states that we've added to the Union since 1796, and both those states supported which presidential candidate, Jefferson or Madison? Because who migrates? The poor. So lesser wealthy people are moving out to the, what is this called? The frontier, and then as they're populating the frontier, they're going to vote Democratic, Republican. Interesting. Because obviously these people that are moving out there aren't rich and educated and elite, because if they were, they wouldn't be moving. So it's safe to say that 1800 shows us that there is this demographic shift. As America is booming in population, it's not booming in rich elite people, it's booming in everyday sorts of people, and those people are going to support the Democratic Republicans. Now Jefferson's inaugural address, the first speech he gives as president, every president gives an inaugural address, not every president gives a farewell address. Every president gives an inaugural address, and he says in his inaugural address, we are all Republicans, we are all Federalists. It's important. His message is a message of unification. His message is a message of, I'm not the president just for my people, like kind of implying that's what Adams did with the Alien and Sedition Acts and these things that are like targeting of Democratic Republicans. He's saying, no, I'm president for all of you, for all Americans, and we are all Republicans, we are all Federalists. Now what this does is kind of crazy. Jefferson's presidency marks 30 years. For the next 30 years, we're going to have straight Democratic Republican presidents every single time. Because the Federalists are going to be dead. So we had our first 2 presidents, Washington and Adams. What party were they from? Anybody else wants to answer? What party are Washington and Adams associated with? Right, they're Federalists. They believe in like strong central government and order. And then after them, after Adams screws everything up, Adams basically kills the Federalist Party. It's pretty impressive. Right? Those Alien and Sedition Acts were so unpopular, it makes them look very unpatriotic. The next run of presidencies are all Democratic Republicans, and then the first 3 are all from Virginia. So you got Jefferson for 8 years, Madison for 8 years, Monroe for 8 years, and then John Adams' son, John Quincy Adams, for 4 years. So out of all of our first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, our first 6 presidents, they all get 2 terms. They all get reelected except the 2 Adams. Right, goes to show you how impressive that family is. Right, and then so this run of Democratic Republican presidencies that will only then be stopped by Andrew Jackson in 1828 when we see a split. And it's no longer the Democratic Republican Party, but it's just the Democratic Party. All right, so we'll get there when we get there. But it's just helpful to know that like this election of Jefferson in 1800 issues in a huge era of Democratic Republican rule. Good. Now, there's 6, when I talk about the ideals of Jeffersonian democracy, there's 6 things I want you to be able to identify as important characteristics or important belief systems of the Democratic Republicans. I'll tell you what you need to write in every box, so don't panic and start writing and tune me out. Because then you'll get to like the 5th line and then we'll be moving on. So stay with me, and I'll highlight for you kind of what this is all about. So the first thing these Jeffersonian Republicans, these Democratic Republicans believe is that they are the preservers, they are the ones to maintain the ideas of American republicanism. And they're going to do so a couple of ways. First, by ensuring civic virtue. Right? Civic virtue is this first development. We've mentioned this before, but the idea of making decisions for the common good. Individual citizens should sacrifice what they want for what's good for society. Virtue. They believe strongly in getting rid of any monarchy or aristocracy traditions, these beliefs that like people should be important just because they're rich and they are born into a good family, right? Very much like this, as you guys already identified, so you guys are already on the right track. They don't believe in this, they believe in that. And one of the last key tenets of this preservers of American republicanism is education. They think Americans should have access to education, and therefore they'll grow up to be smart people who can take care of the country and make good decisions. What I call it. Now, their vision of society, what they want society to look like, is based entirely on an agrarian society. What does agrarian mean? Use the root word there. What does agrarian mean? Farming, agriculture, right? A farm-based society. And in Jefferson's view, this yeoman farmer is the ideal citizen. Jefferson's preferred class is not the elite, it's the common man, what I refer to as the yeomanry. Now the yeomanry aren't the rich, huge plantation owners that own all this land and all these slaves and all this tobacco. The yeomanry are just everyday farmers that have their little plot of land with their family. They work it, they take care of their business, they mind their own business. They don't need any government support for anything, they just do their own thing. The yeomanry. Now, in Jefferson's view of American society, any people that are wage earners, that work for wages from somebody else, or that work like in factories, they said that leads to class conflict. If you have an ownership class that owns a factory, and all the working class that works in the factory, you're going to have a rich versus poor conflict. You guys agree with that to an extent? You guys all loved communism last year, right? This idea of class conflict, rich versus poor. Jefferson says you don't need that class conflict if everybody just farms and does their own thing. Everybody owns their own land and does their own thing. You don't have this rich versus poor class conflict. His vision of American society is very anti-industrial. He thinks, as you guys saw in that John Adams clip from last week, he thinks cities are cesspools of corruption with things like industry and banking and finance and commerce. We don't need that stuff. We're going to just plant some seeds in the ground and mind our own business. And in this American society, if you're going to be an agrarian society, what do you need a lot of? Land. So it's built on territorial expansion. We're going to keep expanding our country to try to get more land, and with more land we can be a more agrarian type society. So far so good. Now as you guys have already identified, in terms of the federal government, he wants a very strict interpretation where states have ultimate sovereignty. States have the authority, states have the power to make state-based decisions. Very in favor of, as you guys pointed out in the Do Now, thank you Antonio, of civil liberties, very pro-Bill of Rights, because freedom of speech and freedom of the press are important to avoid tyranny. And he just wants the government to be, the federal government to be very limited. Right? Limited, is all, if that's all you wrote in there, you'd be in good shape. A very limited, weakened national government. Now, at the national government level, he prefers that power be left in the legislature. Because that is the place where we see republicanism, people choosing their representatives. Fourth piece of Jeffersonian democracy is the economy. As you guys have already identified, Jefferson and his followers strongly prefer agriculture over industry. Agriculture over industry. And that every individual should have the right to work and own their own land and own their own farm and do their own thing without any sort of government interference or government involvement. Now, I'm going to ask you a question I'll have you talk about in a second. Hamilton also believes strongly the U.S. should be economically independent. The U.S. should not be relying on other countries economically. Does that sound familiar? Tell me how. What was Hamilton's goal or method to make the U.S. economically independent from other countries? Take 30 seconds with your partner, identify for me. What was Hamilton's method for making us independent from other countries economically? Go. 30 seconds. So one word answer. There it is. Good. That's coming. Hamilton's dead by now. But Hamilton's financial plan, what was his goal? How was he going to make the U.S.? That's going to help regulate it, but what's he going to do to keep us? What's he going to do to make? What's the Jeffersons design to protect? What about the American economy?
Encouraging people to buy American goods and
American, what kind of goods? All right. So in one word, what is Hamilton's goal for making us economically independent? Brian? Industrialization. Right? If we industrialize, we don't need to buy our manufactured goods from someone else. Jefferson disagrees. They both think we should be economically independent, but Jefferson says we should do so because of how much natural resources we have. We don't need to industrialize, have cities and whatnot, but because of how many resources we have, we won't have to rely on anybody else. It's a different method to the same goal. Now on foreign policy, if you guys remember from last week, Jefferson hates the fact that we use the army to put down the Whiskey Rebellion. He thinks that that's abuse of power in our country. So the Democratic Republicans want very minimal armies and navies and military presence. Small army, because they think that any show of military force suppresses people's liberties. And the idea of Jefferson's foreign policy, you can do it in 3 words: empire of liberty. We're going to spread out, but we're going to spread out with American ideals. We're not going to have colonies. We're going to show everybody the best way to live because we're America and we have all these liberties and it's amazing. Much like Washington, he's going to want to strongly avoid entangling alliances with other countries. And his foreign policy is going to be built more so on expanding the U.S.'s territory, not fighting with other countries. And the last piece is the separation of, the society and culture. What kind of society they want to build, what kind of culture they want to rely on. A couple things are present here. First is the separation of church and state, which is kind of Jefferson's invention with the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom, where religion has no role in politics whatsoever. And then a society and culture built on Republican motherhood. Big characteristic of Jeffersonian democracy is this idea of Republican motherhood. That goes back up to here. That women are the ones raising these virtuous kids, raising these individual citizens, raising these non-corrupted, non-greedy people. It's women's job to not have direct political influence, like voting and running for office, but having indirect political influence by raising virtuous citizens in the society. Good. So that's Jeffersonian democracy. So when I ask you to characterize Jeffersonian democracy, if you can pull 3 or 4 of these things out of the back of your head, you're in good shape. All 6, even better. Right? So if I asked you, on a prompt on your Period 4 test, evaluate the extent to which Jefferson's presidency backed up the ideals of Jeffersonian democracy, you would tell me. On this and this, he backed it up, but on these 3 areas, he didn't. Cool? All right. So Jefferson, I'll do this first. I have a picture for you. This image is like the perfect image of Jefferson's ideal America. It's a good image. In this picture, you'll see 30 different elements of Jeffersonian democracy characterized. Take a minute with your partner, identify what elements that you just listed out of Jeffersonian democracy do you see present in this perfect depiction of Jefferson's America. Take a minute together and make a list of what you see and why. The yeomanry. Good, what else? Good job. What? More so look here. See, do you see any industrialization? Do you see big farms or people with little farms? Yeah, that's the yeomanry, right? Good. What's up? There's a whole bunch of lists. Take a look. This is Jefferson's ideal America. I should convene. There's no rush. Yeah. Good. Good. Look at you, Lopez. Show me what you actually have. Yeah. Do you see any involvement with the national government? Yep, that's kind of the point. Good. I'm going to stop you guys there. Talk to me first, please. Brenda, what elements do you see of Jefferson's ideal America in this picture? The yeomanry's everywhere, right? Now look at all these little farmers. right? Little farm, little farm, little farm. Everybody's doing their own thing. The yeomanry is visible, as I think Lopez said, everywhere in this picture. It's the freaking yeomanry, right? And this way, if you guys get a little confused on Jeffersonian Democracy, just remember this picture. Associate, some of you guys are visual learners, associate this picture, and it should remind you of all of this. All of that too, look at it. We are all Republicans, we're all Federalists. I know, it's good. Cool. What else? So we got the yeomanry. Angel, what else is up here?
What about like the lack thereof?
Yeah, what's missing?
There's no like government or like.
There's no government. There's no, I don't know, what's missing from this picture? There's no government involvement. There's no government tax collector. There's no infrastructure. There's no like, what's up? Yeah, there's no elite. Everybody looks kind of the same, don't they? Yeah, good. What else? Good. There's no visible evidence of industrialization. Good. Go. Ah, where do you see that? Oh. Bottom right corner. Look at this. Here's a mom raising her son and her daughter to work hard, to do chores, to be virtuous, take care of their business. Absolutely. Yeah. Now, and what do you see out in the background of the picture? Land. Right? So when more people want more farms, what are we going to do? Spread out this empire of liberty. Yeah. Yeah. There. Look at you guys go thinking on a Monday afternoon, making me smile. Don't touch him ever again. So, that's Jefferson's goal. That's Jefferson's idea. So he's going to enter office after this election with a very specific set of goals. A very specific set of goals that come up with this ideology you guys just identified. First goal, to reduce the size of the government and to reduce the cost of the government. He thinks the federal government's gotten too big and therefore too expensive, and we need to reduce the size and the cost of the federal government. And by doing so, if we cut taxes and cut the bank and do all this stuff, then we'll go back to a Republican agrarian type of society. That's his goal, right? No government involvement, small government, mind our own business. Second goal is to get rid of these federalist policies that he's very strongly opposed to, such as last week's Alien and Sedition Acts, that he thinks are very offensive to the idea of liberty. He also wants to get rid of these midnight judges I'll talk about in a little bit, but don't get too concerned with that because I'm going to have a whole conversation on that. Cool. Goal 1, Goal 2. Goal 3 is to maintain international peace. The U.S. has stayed out of conflicts with France, out of conflicts with England. Jefferson wants to maintain this peaceful time period that we've had, not fighting other countries. However, like most presidents, Jefferson's going to have to compromise or shift some of his ideologies to actually back up what it takes to be a president. And we'll see what that looks like going forward. So 3 goals. 3 goals. Now I'm going to talk to you guys about actions. So big picture, Jefferson wants to reverse these federalist policies to reduce the size and the cost of government. That's his biggest goal. How is he going to do that? His actions. First thing he's going to do is nothing. He's going to cut this out. See, look at that. Oh my God. I don't know why it drags. See what I mean? And it all happens at once. Cool. First thing he's going to do is cut the size of the army. Right? The army's expensive. We don't need an army that big. We want to have domestic liberties and freedoms. We don't need an army telling us what to do. So he's going to cut the size of the army. That makes the government then cheaper. Makes the government less powerful. Second thing he's going to do, makes sense given his ideology, he's going to get rid of the tax, get rid of the whiskey tax, get rid of the slave tax, and get rid of property taxes. So, knowing what we know about Jefferson, he doesn't like taxes. He didn't like Hamilton's taxes. He thinks the federal government should be small. If the federal government brings in less money, they have less power, less influence, so he's going to cut taxes, so the federal government brings in less money that way. But it's also going to spend less money. Next thing he's going to do, whatever pops up, he's going to allow the Bank of the U.S. The charter only allowed for the bank to live for 20 years. Once that 20 years comes, he's going to let the Bank of the U.S. expire. So there's no more Bank of the U.S. Now, quick question for you guys, with your eyes. Are all of these in line with his ideology? Yeah, so go ahead and put a little plus next to all of these actions, because they back up his ideology of small government, small influence. Right? Put a little plus, a little yes, good job, Jefferson, you backed up what you said you were going to do. And his big focus is going to be paying off the federal government's debt. Ready for a really cool visual? Ready for this? Ready for this? He wants to, let's see if it works, shrink the government. Alright? See that again? See that again? Do it again? Look at that. He wants to shrink the power and the influence of the national government. I know, I get excited about these things.
Do it again.
No, 2 is good. 2 is good. Enough out of you, Jess. Third time's the charm. Third time would work. I'd click and it'd go real good. It worked twice, I'm happy. Big picture, if you know one thing about his goal, to reduce the size of the national government and restore power back to state governments. That's the big picture goal there. The big picture goal is to reduce the influence of the federal government and to try sitting up and not stretching out if you're on your couch. And restoring power to state governments. Good. But check this out. I'm going to get a little wild here for a second. Can you guys all see the board okay? So, when does the election that elects Jefferson take place? What year? All right, so 1800 is the election. Now, elections happen in November. Okay? Presidents at this time, they don't take office until the next year, obviously, and they don't take office until March. Now, in today's world, the same thing happens. You elect a president in November, they take office in January. But at the time, it took a long time to move to Washington, D.C. There's no infrastructure, right? Got to pick your family stuff up, put it on a wagon, find a horse. It's a whole ass production and mess. So you have a 4-month window here. This is a 4-month window in which, who is still president? Adams is still president for this 4-month window. Adams is from what political party? He's a Federalist, right? And Jefferson's coming in, he's from what political party? Democratic Republican. So there's a 4-month window in which Adams knows, I'm not going to be president anymore, but I'm still president right now. That's called, it's a good 8-push phrase, that's called the lame duck period. The lame duck period. Why is it called that? Because when you go hunting and you shoot a duck, and you like kind of kill it, but it's not quite dead yet, you gotta wait for it to die. I'm just kidding, I made that up, I have no idea why it's called that. But this lame duck period means Adams has 4 months of influence, even though he knows the American people have already spoken and they disagree with his policies. How do the American people speak? Voting. Yeah, with their election, right? They voted for the other party, and yet Adams is still in power. So in this lame duck period, these Federalists do not want to see their policies destroyed by Jefferson and the Democratic Republicans. They realize, we lost the election, we took a huge L, we're about to lose power of the executive branch and the legislative branch. What the hell are we going to do? In the months before leaving office, what happens instead is in this lame duck period, they're going to pass a new Judiciary Act. So, Judiciary Act of 1801 is the beginning of your answer, but I want your eyes back on me so I can explain what's happening. What's the top court in the U.S. called? Cool. So the Supreme Court, and that was put in place by the Constitution, yes? Remember we talked about the Judiciary Act of what year? 1789. And that was the one that set up, I'm going to show you guys the visual, set up all the courts below it. Court here, right? Local courts. Yes, so far so good, nobody's that confused yet. So that way if you're like a little farmer in Virginia, you want to sue your neighbor for stealing your cow, right? You start here, and then you can go there, and then they go to the Supreme Court. Cool? So far so good. Now, all these federal courts are manned by federal judges. These federal judges, and they're not elected. How do we get judges? They get appointed. They get picked by the president, and then confirmed by the Senate. These are appointed positions, not elected positions. Quick question for you guys. If you were elected to office, who do you answer to? No, like in today's society. So if I run for city council of my city in Monrovia, right, and I win, who do I have to answer to? The people of Monrovia, right? Like, they're the ones who elected me, so I have to respond to them. With me? So far, so good? Nobody's that confused yet? So, like, who should the president be responding to? The people, right? If you are appointed, why is it good that we don't elect judges? Do we want judges to answer to what the people want? What do we want judges to do? Answer to the law. Be fair, exactly. So these are appointed positions, and the federal judges, if you were picked, this is crazy, today it's still true. If you're picked as a federal judge, how long do you serve? Presidents serve for 4 years, maybe 8 if they get 2 terms. Right? How long do you serve if you're a federal judge?
Until you die.
Until you die. Until you die or you retire, whichever comes first. So this is it's called a lifetime appointment. Literally, if you're a federal judge, you are in that position for life or until you freaking retire. Check this out. So now we're understanding federal judges a little better. Presidents pick them, yada, yada, yada. The Federalists in this lame duck period, this 4-month window in which they're going to lose power in 4 months, the American people have already spoken. The American people have changed their mind on what they want running their country. They pass a new Judiciary Act. The Judiciary Act of 1801. And what it does is it adds more courts. And then who gets to pick the judges for those courts? Adams does, before he leaves office. So we end up with 16 new federal judges. He makes the Supreme Court bigger, so that he can pick 2 more Supreme Court justices. He makes the federal judiciary bigger, so all told, it's 16 new federal judges that are created by the Judiciary Act of 1801 that then Adams gets to pick. They're called the midnight judges because the Democratic Republican critique of that is it's like the midnight on the last day of your term when you're still trying to add all these judges that are going to see your perspective. Question for you. Have the Federalists just lost control of the executive branch, presidency?
Yes.
Yeah. Have they just lost control of the legislative branch?
Yes.
Yes. What have they done with the judiciary branch? They've consolidated the judiciary branch with Federalist control for how long? Yeah, until all these people are going to die or retire. So you pick a bunch of young judges, and next thing you know, like, the Federalist Party is long gone, but the judicial branch is still controlled by people with Federalist ideology. Who thinks this is a little bit shady? Raise your hand if you think this is a little shady. A little question. Yeah? Yeah, and the other's like, no, this is politics. Suspicious. Good. Go back. Good. No, too far. See? This is going to be the death of me, bro. I'm going to throw this computer. I think it might be the computer. I know. Good. So, stay with me. Jefferson, once he takes office, he's like, no. That's nonsense. That's BS. And he tells his Secretary of State, James Madison, to not deliver the appointments. The appointments they've been approved by the Senate. Adams has done it. And that for some of the appointments, they haven't made it to the actual judge yet. Okay? And Jefferson says, no, since we're now president, they haven't received their notice yet, we can just move on. One of these judges who does not get his appointment is named William Marbury. And he's going to file a lawsuit against James Madison, saying, the president appointed me, the Senate approved me, so therefore I should be a federal judge. Why don't I have my appointment? He's going to have a lawsuit. The lawsuit's going to start here in a local court. It's going to go to an appeals court. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. And Marbury versus Madison, William Marbury against James Madison, becomes quite inarguably the most important Supreme Court case of the early Republic. And I'll tell you why. So in the ruling, the Supreme Court, and the ruling itself doesn't matter, I promise. But what happens because of it matters significantly. The ruling itself, the Supreme Court rules that Jefferson's decision, Jefferson saying, no, we're not going to give that guy the appointment. When Jefferson did that, the Supreme Court ruled he did not violate the law, and he did not violate the Constitution. So the court just decided that Jefferson had the authority to cancel that appointment because it hadn't been finalized yet. Is that big of a deal? No. But what did the court just decide for the first time? What did the court just make a decision on for the first time? In saying Jefferson didn't break the law and the Judiciary Act of 1801 doesn't violate the Constitution? What does the court just decide for the first time? Yeah, good. What's constitutional? So we talked last week about who should decide if a law is unconstitutional or not. And we talked about the Virginia, Kentucky resolutions with the states and nullification trying to nullify laws. The Supreme Court just for the first time set up what's called the precedent of judicial review. That's the significance there. In making this decision, the Marbury v. case establishes the principle of judicial review, which allows the Supreme Court the power to declare any law or act of Congress or the presidency unconstitutional. Unconstitutional. It's very important. And what this does, this idea of judicial review, is it makes the whole rest of the system work. Because now we have something to hold Congress accountable to follow the Constitution. And we have something to hold the presidency accountable to follow the Constitution. This idea of judicial review is vitally important. It's the foundation on which everything else is built. Because it's the one thing that can keep Congress or the presidency from getting too much power. It sets up the judiciary as a co-equal branch of government. So now they have some checking and balancing authority on the other two branches. So, I have a great cartoon for you. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. How many of you guys are at least kind of sort of sports fans? I don't care what sport, you pay attention to a sport. Cool. Cool. Kevin Scott, what sport do you like? Soccer. Excellent. So, I have a cartoon for you. It does a good job of pointing out what judicial review actually looks like, and it makes a good analogy. So, take 2 minutes with your partner and tell me, how does this cartoon demonstrate the principle of judicial review? 2 minutes, go for it together, and then we will go from there. What is this cartoon demonstrating to you guys?
Use the same one every year.
This one? This one's great. This cartoon's the best. What? No. Yeah, now we're going, Angel. Good job. Sure. Yeah, very good. But Congress, right? They're not playing the game. They're those games. 10 seconds. I might just use you to click through. It just made sense. This is why I teach. All right, let me stop you guys there. So, in a sport, let's pick Kevin Scott's favorite sport, soccer. I think soccer is kind of boring because you just watch everyone go back and forth all day. And then sometimes they score a goal and then they're just like, oh, okay. Well,
It takes forever.
It takes forever, right? Like some of you guys are writing an SAQ. Now, in soccer, do the referees play the game? No. But can you play a game of soccer, like a real game of soccer without a referee? No. So why are they there? If you just told me they don't play the game, but you can't play a game of soccer without them, why are they there? To see if things are fair. What do referees do in soccer game?
Call foul.
They go, they call fouls. And then when do they call a foul? When somebody doesn't follow the rules. That's judicial review. Is you have the legislative branch doing their thing, you have the executive branch doing their thing. They're the ones actually playing the political game. They're the ones getting elected, making laws, enforcing laws, doing the actual work of governing. And it's the judiciary's job to just sit back and call the rules. And according to judicial review, what is the rule book? The Constitution. Right? Their job is to check the constitutionality, the legality of what the executive branch and the judicial branch are doing. It's crazy.
Answer the freaking question, bro.
give you the answers on a freaking silver platter. Now, fun fact, one of the other midnight judges, midnight appointees, becomes Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is the guy in charge of the entire Supreme Court, the guy who has the most influence and power on the Supreme Court, is voted as the Chief Justice. So one of these other midnight judges, who you guys all said was kind of shady in the first place, his name is John Marshall. And he becomes Chief Justice of the Supreme Court literally for the next 34 years. That's a long time. So he's in charge of the whole judicial branch for the most part for the next 34 years. What party is he going to be from? Yeah, he's a Federalist. Adams picks him. And despite the fact that the Federalists then lose their power, they lose their elections, they're not in charge of the country anymore, he will stay in charge of the Supreme Court for the next 34 years. So every single time there's a conflict of can the federal government do that or not, where's Marshall going to fall? On the can or cannot? Can, right? As a Federalist, he believes that the federal government should have a loose interpretation and extra authority. So for the next 30-something years, every court case that Marshall decides, this is good to have in the back of your head if you know it's a Marshall court case, every single case, first of all, you're blocking the camera. Second of all, it's not nap time. Third of all, sit up, put your pen on paper. Okay. I'm sorry you want to sit here and chill. Nobody else is sitting here and chilling. Now, for the next 34 years, every single time Marshall makes a court ruling decision, it's going to be to strengthen the power of the national government. These are the ones you should know. Don't worry, I'll go over each of them and their significance and what they decide in class on Wednesday. Cool. So that's judicial review, that's Marshall's influence. Go ahead and take a minute with your partner and make sure you come up with a good answer for that bolded, targeted question. How does Marshall help maintain the legacy of the Federalist Party, despite the Federalist Party no longer having control over the executive and judicial branch? Take a minute, make sure you brainstorm that question, you come up with a good response there. 1 minute, go for it. Good. So he keeps Federalist ideology in the course. So as they're interpreting the Constitution, they're interpreting it in a pro-Federalist type of way. Good. Good words, guys. Good words. You guys are coming far.
Like strong national government.
I like it. I like it.
Support the strength of the national government.
Cool. Yeah. Good job. I heard Antonio. I heard my boy Felix talking about how this keeps Federalist ideas. Specifically the loose interpretation, the pro-elastic clause, stretching of the federal government's authority at the judicial level. Good. Go ahead and turn the page for me, please. Now we'll talk about Jefferson's actual actions as president, where things get a little more interesting. So check it out. I'm going to turn the lights off for just a second so you can see this map a little better. I think it matters. Brian, when I signal you, you can turn the light back on. You got that, bro? Good. Believe you. So check it out. This map is good, but it's very color dependent. So when Jefferson is elected, it is just this very light color that is inhabited. Only this light color has been settled. Cool? That's not confusing yet? Most people live where? On the what? Yeah, the Atlantic seaboard. Good. Most people live, in the first 13 states that existed. We see 10 years later, America has settled out to significantly more land. 10 years after that, even more so. What are Americans mostly following on this settlement patterns? Look at it. Yes, they're going west. That's important. Good. They are going west. What else are they following? I heard it. Rivers. Good job. The Americans are following, this is the Ohio River Valley. This is the Mississippi River Valley. This is the Tennessee River Valley. So for the most part, Americans are spreading westward along waterways. Why waterways? Do we have roads yet? No. Bridges, cars, highway? No. So waterways are our main source of transportation, of commerce, of trade, of business, of migration, of all of those things. Waterways are the way to do it. Cool? So during Jefferson's presidency, our population goes way up. Well, as you can see, this is 1670 on, small population, small population, small population. Post-revolution, it goes up. Jefferson's presidency, the U.S. grows by 2 million people. That's a big increase. It's a big increase. And check it out, we got 3 new states. Kentucky becomes a state in 1792, Tennessee becomes a state in 1796, and Ohio becomes a state in 1803. Bonus question. How many, take 10 seconds with your partner, I want you to think about why I'm asking this question. Of these 3 states, how many of the 3 have become slave states? Talk to your partner, how would you know? How would you know? How would you know? It's not true. I think Northwest Territory. Northwest Territory. Yes, Antonio. Get it. All right. All right. Stansbury. How many of these 3 states become slave states, sir?
2.
Good. Which 2?
Kentucky and Tennessee.
Why? Why not Ohio?
Because that was part of the Articles of Confederation that didn't allow them to hold slaves.
Help her out.
In the Northwest.
Louder.
The Northwest order.
Yes, the Northwest ordinances under the Articles of Confederation outlaws slavery north of what? Ohio River. So there's the Ohio River. Good. So Kentucky, slave or free? Yeah, we'll put some slaves up in there. Let's go. Tennessee, slave or free? Slave. Ohio? No slaves. Good. And that's the last good thing Ohio's ever done. Now, I'm sorry. So, good job. Moral of the story, though, people are spreading westward. Good job. I know a lot of you said the answer you wanted to share, and I freaking love it. Y'all making me happy. Jefferson, though, is worried that up to this point, the U.S. territory stops right here. Here's the U.S. This is France. It's New France. Now, Jefferson is really worried that if we keep spreading westward, you with me so far? Yeah. And people want to, like, what are these people out here on the frontier doing for work? They're farming and they want to sell their crops. How do they sell their crops? Trade. Is it easier to get their crops over land back to the East Coast or over water? Over water. Yeah, and this is the key. Is that especially in the Ohio River Valley or the Tennessee River Valley, all those rivers, every river on this part of the country is going to drain into the Mississippi River. Mississippi River is a big old river. It's crazy. And the Mississippi River is going to come right out of America into the Gulf of Mexico in a city called New Orleans. Now, technically, New Orleans is part of France. So the U.S. doesn't get to use the port of New Orleans because it belongs to France. Now, for the most part, France lets us use it because we're friends, we're cool with France, it's all good. But Jefferson's concern is, what if the French stopped letting us use it? Then all these yeoman farmers that are his supporters will be living in the interior of the country and have no way to ship their goods out there and be pissed off. There it is, look at that. Boom, New Orleans. So what Jefferson does is Jefferson sends a group to France. And their goal, their objective, their focus is to just buy the port of New Orleans. They're buying New Orleans. They're going to buy this little city right here, and they're going to buy this city for $10 million. It is cheap. It's a pretty good deal. Because Jefferson wants access to the Mississippi River. And if you don't have the city where the river comes into the ocean, there's no point in having access to the river. New Orleans. Napoleon, he receives this delegation. We're friendlier with France now after the XYZ affair has died down. And we're cool. The quasi-war is over. And Napoleon says, hey guys, I got a deal for you. instead of 10 million bucks for New Orleans, how about you instead give me 15 million bucks and I give you the entire Louisiana territory? All of New France. And everyone's like, oh my God, what a great deal, right? It absolutely is a deal, especially from the natives. Now, moral of the story, Napoleon is broke. Napoleon's worried about European conquest, and Napoleon wants access to money, and he's like, I can't really govern this new territory, so I can sell it to America and not worry about it anymore. Focus on European domination. Now, Napoleon's an interesting character. What's the one thing you know about Napoleon? Yeah, false. Napoleon is actually of average height at the time. So the joke about Napoleon being short comes from other shortcomings in his life. I'll let you make the assumption. So yes, he wasn't short, but he was short. I'm watching those of you that get it, and those of you who are like, yeah, he was short. He was short. Good. Yeah. So anytime you guys hear like the Napoleon complex, or guys try to compensate, it's not that they're compensating for their height. It's that they're compensating for their shortness. Now, history jokes. It's true. It's true. Napoleon was of average height, right? So, gang, gang. That's hilarious. All right. So, this is what it looks like. Check me out. The U.S. before 1803 is this big. For 15 million bucks, we just doubled the size of the United States. Counting. So in 1803, Congress approves, or Congress signs off on the purchase of France for $15 million, and that doubles the size of the U.S. with one purchase. It's pretty impressive. Now, we're very excited because Americans have access to new Western lands, but there's a couple problems that are going to be presented by this purchase. Problem one. Does it say in the Constitution that the president has the authority to purchase land? No. So according to Jefferson's ideology, can he buy this land? No. Uh-oh. So politically, this is going to go against his ideology because it will require a loose interpretation of the Constitution. Does it say the president can't purchase land? No. So all of a sudden, whose ideology is he adopting all of a sudden? Oh, what do you know? Isn't that a federal perspective? But let's talk about why it actually is, to an extent, in line with his ideology. The U.S. just doubled in size. What type of people are going to move this way? Yeoman farmers. So what part of his ideology does it support? Yeah, it's his economic ideology for a yeoman-based economy and territorial expansion for the Empire of Liberty. So for your targeted question there, I think it's pretty straightforward, that it violates his constitutional ideology while supporting his economic ideology, having an economy built on the yeomanry, on an agricultural base, and an agrarian economy. Yeomanry. That's right. So the question becomes, is this purchase, you guys all good? You guys need a second to catch up? Take a second to catch up. What? Yeah, Napoleon's shortcomings. He was just short in other ways. His money, he was short on money.
He's 5'7".
Yeah, he's short on money. He's got short bank account. Cool. So eyes back up here, please. So the question becomes, like, is this purchase constitutional? And despite Jefferson's proclaimed belief in a strict interpretation, he's going to use the elastic clause to justify it. But wait a second. Wasn't Jefferson just hooting and hollering and screaming about Hamilton using the elastic clause to make a bank? Wasn't Jefferson just pissed off as all hell that we've used the elastic clause to do all this other stuff, and now that he's president, what is he doing? Using the elastic clause. Interesting. Next question. Jefferson believes in, like, citizenship and the Empire of Liberty. What about all these people that live in New Orleans? The French that live there, the Spanish that live there, do they get to become citizens because we just bought the land they live on? No. No, they do not. Because in his opinion, just buying the land they live on does not grant citizenship to foreigners. Another problem. So this Louisiana Purchase is a struggle because in some ways it really supports Jefferson's vision of this agrarian economy and the yeomanry. But constitutionally and ethically, it's a little different. Best part about the whole thing, though, is the Federalists are pissed.
What?
Because they say, no, you can't do that. The Constitution does not say you can buy land. For the last 12 years, they were like, elastic clause, elastic clause, elastic clause. You get a bank. You get a tariff. You get a whiskey tax. Yeah, Marsk. Hi, Ron Dog. I don't understand why Mark's name has a C and a K. They both make the same sound. So his name is Marsk because it's a soft C and then a K. It makes more sense. Why would you have Mark? Mark. So he's Marsk because then that's a soft C, right? It makes more sense. I thought the first day called him roll, I was like, bro, your name doesn't make any sense. We're gonna go with Marsk. He's like, okay. Or Slim Shady for his hair. Now, the Federalists, after 12 years of using a loose interpretation, are going to say, no, the president doesn't have the power to do that because the Constitution doesn't say he can. And their reasoning, which is the best, is that, oh no, we can't buy that land. It would cost way too much money. Did the Federalists have any problem spending money when they were president? No. No, not one bit. But now that somebody else is president, now they're worried about cost. They're worried about the U.S. debt. Hamilton loved the debt. The Federalists were all about debt because debt creates credit. And now they're worried about the debt because now they're no longer in power. But let's talk about the real reason why Federalists are mad. Look at this map. Where on this map is the Federalist support strongest? The Northeast, right here, right? Maybe a little bit here. Yes? And when it's just this as the country, and this is the Federalist section, and this is the Democratic Republican section, can they compete? Yeah. But what if it's Federalists against Democratic Republicans? Now can they compete?
No.
So is it safe to say that maybe everything the Federalists are doing is less about what's good for the country and more about what's good for them? Alien and Sedition Acts. Was that good for the country or was that supposed to be good for them? Yeah. Opposition to the Louisiana Purchase. Good for them. So they try to use this strict interpretation to argue against the Louisiana Purchase unsuccessfully. The real reason they're opposed to the Louisiana Purchase is they're concerned that all of these new western lands would be populated with what kind of people? Yeah. Poor, small farmers, minding their own business, and those type of people are more loyal to the Democratic Republican Party. It's almost like it's not about ideology at all, and it's more about political power. Interesting. My AP Gov kids in the back will tell you, the first goal of any politician is to get elected. Their second goal is to stay elected. Oh, you guys aren't even there yet. Good. So I have two perspectives. They're both good. You got Jefferson's argument in favor of the Louisiana Purchase, and you have two congresspeople, a Samuel White as a senator, and a Griswold as a House Representatives member. Their arguments against the Louisiana Purchase. So you're reading both side by side. I'm going to give you 6. All I want is 3 bullet points for both. Check this out. 3 bullet points for what are Jefferson's arguments in favor of. 3 bullet points for what are the other guys' arguments against the Louisiana Purchase. Can you guys handle that? I don't need full complete sentences, just 3 bullet points for both. 6 minutes, you're on your own. You're going now. Read. I don't like that angle anymore. I like your angle better. I'm not sure, but doesn't do it for me. All right. Just say it. I know. Are you reading or are you hanging out? You're listing arguments in favor and against. more than one milk for the rest of you before. Let's see how. On the Thursday, we made arrogant feelings. Monday's arrogant system. I know. Thursday's War of 1812. Mark revolutions. I know. Jeffersonian Democracy. The Transportation Revolution. The Lowell Girls. People have to hate on the Lowell Girls. Samuel Slater. Slater, yeah.
Cotton gin.
The cotton gin, yeah. 4 minutes. I need 3 bullet points. What are the arguments Jefferson gives in favor? What are the arguments the 2 congressmen give against?
Species circular.
Down, I have 70-40 mils.
Is it for surgery?
No.
Are you going to take a surgery?
Only 5 Getting such those cheap cans. When were the speakers up? For me. She won. She got to sleep in. I was outside her house. 3 minutes. What are the arguments in favor? What are the arguments against? How does Jefferson argue in favor? We're gonna work on that reading.
Oh, Ruby.
Ruby's in. No. She's one of the girls. I swear to God, I need a bonus or something. Like some of the people that got 3s, some people got 4s, some people got 5s. Like, that's wild. Like you guys getting 4s and 5s, not surprising. Like Shayla and Sarah getting a 4. G shit. I'm sorry. Alex O'Rourke passing the test.
That's insane.
That Christoph Ibarra passing the test.
I did not see Russell.
Did we? 90 seconds. 3 arguments in favor. 3 arguments opposed.
You still own those pizzas?
I know. I was gonna go on Friday, but it was a shorter day, so the lunch was shorter.
Oh, we got pizza? Since Christoph got a 3? Yeah, 3 pizza.
There's about 40 seconds left. Violate means like it's against the law.
Who didn't pass that for sure?
So there's one every year where I'm like blown away. All right, go ahead and take 2 with the person next to you, please. Take 2 and kind of identify what's the generic Jeffersonian argument and what's the generic opposition argument. 2 minutes, go. Dive in. Yeah. But yeah, every year there's one kid where I'm like, what the hell? Her writing was good. I thought she'd get like a 3. Nobody got a 1. Oh yeah. I never thought she would pass it. Yeah, I had 0. 1 minute.
What did Jen read?
What did you read?
Bad that I memorized all this stuff.
What did Cabrera get?
Alex? He didn't test well. He also didn't work that. He's a good kid. Like,
He knew stuff.
sometimes. He didn't know all your stuff. Yeah. Same with Justin. He didn't test well.
Not surprised by
I wasn't surprised at all that one. Alright. So walk me through, please. For both? Alright, cool. Why don't you give me the first one and then you can give me the second. Cool. So why is Jefferson arguing in favor of it? All ears on the other.
That it was benefit, it was for the common good of the nation, that they were going to bring the voters for both, and that it was just going to be better for everyone if they did the purpose of the nation.
It's a common good argument, right? Like buying Louisiana, the word we left talking about back there, what's the word that he uses?
Beyond.
It's a little beyond the Constitution, but we're going to stretch our powers a little bit and do what we got to do because it's good for the country. Right? If I showed you that argument earlier in the class, like last week, would you have thought that was a Hamiltonian or a Jeffersonian argument? Yeah. But except the only reason that it's Jeffersonian is he's arguing it's good for what reasons? Agriculture. Right? All the different stuff we can farm. So it's kind of like a hybrid approach of like Hamilton's ideological perspective with Jefferson's economic perspective. Good and good. Cool. So it's good for the country. What's the argument against it for us? All right, son.
Well, I found the sentence that says that new territory is basically risky because both the territory and the people in that territory can be taken over either by conquest or purchase.
Good, right? Oh my God. What about all these illegal aliens that are going to be in that land we just bought? Isn't that funny? He says that, like there's foreign, bro, you bought the land. It's not their fault. Did they move? Did they migrate to America? No. America migrated to them. They just stayed still. What else?
He also mentions that the integration of a foreign nation into the union is going to destroy the perfect union that was settled by the original plan.
Yes, by adding all this new territory, you're going to destroy this perfect balance that we have of our current land situation. Good, 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 good. So big picture, it gets approved regardless. Affects Louisiana Purchase if you turn your page. Short term, in the short term, it creates. Why are you trying to take some cash? Why are you going to drop feelings like that, bro? Short term, it's a constitutional crisis. Does the president have the power to do that or not? The answer is going to be yes. Also, short term, it's very difficult to control that much land. America, as you guys saw from the map here, check me out, guys. So I go one to the right this way? Never mind. America's barely settled like to here. And now we just got way more land. So it's very hard to govern, it's hard to regulate, which means that the land is pretty unruly out on the frontier. Long term, the effects are a little more clear. They continue this precedent of anytime we buy new land, that land will eventually be incorporated as equal states, not as colonies. that eventually that land will become full, equal states like everybody else. It also makes America safer, because now we don't have a foreign power right there on our border. Not to worry about the French changing their opinion and cutting off access to New Orleans, right? It allows us really as the only, at that point, like large power that was successful in North America. Sure, Spain still has control of Mexico, but not really in this part of like North America, more so down in like modern day Mexico and Latin America. So it kind of leaves us kind of on our own as a safer country. And the most important effect, which will be a thing for the rest of the semester, is it lays this foundation for manifest destiny. That America has the God-given right and responsibility to rule over the whole continent from sea to sea. That God put us here to spread American liberty and American ideals, and damn it, if some Native Americans and some Mexicans are in the way, we're going to spread out anyway.
Amen.
God said so.
Amen.
Yeah, there goes Stansbury. Amen. So this foundational piece really begins with Jefferson, and it carries us through the whole rest of the first semester into the Civil War, and really arguably into American imperialism as well. That we have this God-given right and responsibility to spread out. It also pisses off Native Americans, which should not surprise you, because every time we spread out, we piss off Native Americans. All right, catch up on that question before I talk about 1804.
I got nostalgia on certain I was like,
Which Oh, Melissa, got it. Cool. No problem.
now when he
Mel's-
came into our AP Gov,
What's up?
when he came to our AP Gov,
All right. So, eyes back up. Really sorry for the break. 1804. 1804. Jefferson runs for re-election. He's already president. He's running for his second term. And look at my election map. What does this election map reveal about American political beliefs? Yeah, they're definitely pro-Jefferson. That the Federalists have lost some of their credibility. The Democratic Republicans are very popular. Jefferson is very popular. It means that Americans agree with, for example, Louisiana Purchase. Americans agree with, for example, the way he's running the country, his vision for American success. And now we have another new state, Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee. And check it out. Kentucky has only been a state for like 10 days, and they already have more people than where? What are some states that Kentucky has more people from than? Well, Tennessee's also new. More than Georgia. What else? More than Vermont, more than New Hampshire, more than Rhode Island. Almost as many as Connecticut, as many as New Jersey. So what is that showing that people are doing? People are migrating, right? That people are moving westward in pretty large numbers because now Kentucky and Tennessee are both quite populous. So 1804, it shows that Americans are very pro-Jefferson. Americans are very in support of Jefferson's actions. Americans are very in support of the Democratic Republicans. And the Federalists have kind of lost almost all their credibility. Almost, not all, because they're going to lose some more soon, don't worry.
1814?
That's on Thursday, though. They're going to make a little comeback real quick, because Jefferson's going to mess up. Jefferson's second term, he did not get caught slipping, but sure. Bill Clinton got caught slipping. Jefferson's second term is plagued by not domestic problems, but foreign policy problems. Foreign policy problems. The first are the Barbary pirates. Everyone do your best pirate voice for me. Arr! Yeah, there we go. Good. So, Josue's a good pirate. Josue's a good. All right. So the Barbary coast. If you guys remember world history, is the north coast of Africa, and these are called at the time the Barbary states. Nobody's confused yet? Good. Now, the Barbary states, they kind of use their pirates to patrol the European coast. And they're pirates, so they just steal stuff. That's what pirates do. So, under the Washington and Adams administrations, we paid bribes to them. We bribed the pirates so they'd not steal our stuff. Seem reasonable? And they didn't steal our stuff. Once Jefferson takes office, they raise the rate. They make the bribe more expensive. And Jefferson's like, hell no, we're not paying that. Reasonable. They increased their bribes, and Jefferson, who I thought was kind of anti-using the military for force, Jefferson sends the U.S. Navy and the brand new branch of the Navy, the U.S. Marines, which only in the first place exists to fight pirates, go figure, sends the Navy and the Marines to go impose our will on the Barbary states. It's a mini-war conflict. Eventually we sign a treaty with them, and that goes in America's favor, and then we're back on good terms and they stop stealing our stuff. But again, it shows Jefferson kind of going against his ideology. Right? He's against a large navy and a large army, and here he is using a large navy to try to impose America's will. But the way more important problem that we have to deal with is a problem that I mentioned last week. Can I erase the midnight judges thing up here? We're okay? All right, all right. What's the problem that Jay's treaty was supposed to solve that didn't? Impressment. Good. The bigger problem of Jefferson's second term is impressment. And impressment is very simple. I'll give you some background first. So in early 1800s, we still have the Napoleonic Wars. Who is France fighting? Everybody. It's France, right? They're invading Russia. Everybody's dying. They're invading, but yeah. So the main players, though, are England and France. Who does America want to trade with? Yeah, France and England, right? So what impressment is pretty hilarious if you think about it, how soft and weak we are. America's trying to trade with Britain, and the French are intercepting our ships, stealing our cargo, and forcing those sailors into the French Navy. It's like getting drafted for the military, but by a different country. And then vice versa. When we're trying to trade with France, the British Navy is stealing our ships, taking our cargo, and forcing our sailors into the British Navy. That's impressment. To be impressed or to be forced into service in somebody else's military. So the Napoleonic War between England and France leads both countries to attack our trade, to attack our ships. Just for some data, for some context, the British Navy is impressing or stealing over 1,000 American sailors. Not military sailors, not Navy people. They're just there trying to sell their goods. They're merchants. They're business people. The British Navy is stealing 1,000 American merchant sailors every single year. 1803, 1804, 1805, 1806, 1807. So more than 5,000 Americans are now serving in the British Navy. By choice? No. No. All right, not to mention how much lost cargo we have, all those lost ships. It's not good. Question for you. Take 20 seconds to partner. What can America do about it? What's a solution that we might be able to solve to stop impressment? Go for it. Dive in.
Just say no. Wait.
Just say no. Nancy Reagan would have fixed it. War on drugs, baby. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, and done. All right. Who's the diplomatic genius who has a solution for me? You guys are all advisors to Jefferson. Help me solve this problem. Go for it. Stop trading. Okay, that's a good idea. Brian, let's go. Industrialize it. That takes a long time. How about like in the short term? We signed a treaty? All right. What else? Violence. We can go to war. Yeah.
Didn't he pass an act?
We're going to talk about it. But what are some other solutions? Ideological solutions. So, yeah, good idea. So let's think about solution 1 is war. Are we equipped to go to war with England or France? No. No, solution 2 is Brian, you said a treaty?
Yeah.
Didn't we already try that with Jay's treaty?
Oh, yeah.
Did it work?
No.
Because we're like, hey, France, stop taking our sailors. And France is like,
Yeah, no.
cool, bro. Who are you again? You ever get a text message from somebody who's asking you for a favor and you're like, I don't even know who this is? Right? All the time, right? That's France. We're like, hey, France, like, can you help us out and stop taking our stuff? And they're like, who's this? Oh, you the people that didn't help us for our revolution? You the people that weren't there to have our backs? And we tell you, hey, England, can you stop taking our boats, please? And England's like, yeah, can you pay back all that debt from the Revolutionary War? Can you maybe not declare independence and fight us? Can you, you know? So a war is a bad option. A treaty is a good option, but we have no what? We have no credibility. We have no influence. We have no power. We can't look at you and be like, hey, stop taking my boats or I'm going to beat your ass. Because England's like, cool, try. So the solution is a brilliant solution. The most brilliant solution. And it's that kid at the park who's getting picked on. And what does he do? He takes his ball and goes home. I'm not playing with anybody. He just leaves. Right? That's what America does. America just bounces. We're like, we're not trading with you. We're not trading with you. We're not even trading with you, Spain. The Dutch? Hell no, not you guys either. America embargoes or stops trading with everybody. Thinking that will force England and France to respect us. Because they're going to see how important we are to their industrialization, to their whole commercial system. And England's like, y'all hear something? Who stopped doing this? Oops. I don't know who that is. That does not sound familiar. And France is like, thanks for the $15 million for the Louisiana territory. That's cool. We're going to go try to conquer Russia real quick. Rather than actually find a solution, Jefferson's answer and the Democratic Republicans' answer is to stop trading with everybody. And what this does is it absolutely destroys the economy. As it would. Are we a self-sufficient, independent economy yet? No. Not even freaking close. In the year 1807, the U.S. was exporting $108 million in goods. That's a lot of money. We're selling $108 million of stuff to other countries. The year the embargo was into effect, it's $22 million. 85% of our economy is gone, wiped out, annihilated, disappeared. Because we think we're so important, we can just tell England and France, you don't listen to our demands, we just won't trade with you. And they're like, cool. But what this does by accident, is it sparks American industrialization. What's the one thing Jefferson didn't want in the economy? And look what he did. Look what he did. By stopping us buying stuff from other countries, we have all these raw materials. We're like, we should probably make a manufactured good. Well, what are we going to do with all this cotton? You want to make some textiles? What are we going to do with all this iron ore? You want to make some iron? So the point is that by cutting off other countries, Jefferson's goal was to have them respect us. The actual outcome or effect is we spend the next 30 years going through what's called the market revolution, and the U.S. begins for the first time manufacturing for themselves manufactured goods, industrialized goods. So Jefferson's brilliant plan, A, in the short term backfires because it kills the economy, and B, in the long term backfires because it leads to a more industrialized economy. Really, he played himself. So, why does it fail? Why does the Embargo Act not do its job? We're not that important because we overestimate how important we are to the global economy. And England's like, oh, we don't have to compete with them to sell stuff in the West Indies anymore? Cool. We'll sell all our stuff to the West Indies without any competition. So the impact of it is, A, it increases smuggling. Americans are like, we're just not going to listen to it. We're going to still sell our goods and smuggle our goods. It kills agricultural prices. That sucks. It kills the shipping industry. That sucks. Which party does this hurt? Agricultural prices. Democratic Republicans. What party does the shipping industry hit? Federalists, right? Like that's where the shipping and the commerce and the trade are. So it kills everybody. It kills the entire nation's economy, but it does cause us to have more reliance on domestic manufacturing. Cool. So I got two quick texts. You have the Secretary of the Treasury, who's going to be opposed to it. You have Jefferson, who of course is in favor of the Embargo Act. Read them both side by side in the next 4 minutes, and just tell me how do their arguments differ in terms of how to deal with the impressment problem. 4 minutes on your own, then we're going to finish strong. Go. You're reading. You guys want to hold hands across the twins? How do they differ in how to solve this impressment problem? What are their different perspectives? When I came here to go. Wow. That's fine. Go do your thing. Get it out. Get it. Congratulations. How do their arguments differ in how they want to deal with impressment?
You ate my food.
You're lactose intolerant? We found the one thing you won't eat.
Dairy. I'll still eat it though.
Why are we shouting in the hallway? I'm teaching. You should be. Love you too. Shut up. I'm not regular. Yo, Mandarin.
You need yogurt and noodles? No.
All right. So take the next 27 seconds. Share with the person next to you. How do these two differ in their views of how to solve the impressment problem? Use each other, use your text, be specific, go. David, how do they differ? How do they differ? How do they differ? Yeah. Secretary of. So what's his biggest concern? The economy, right? So of course he doesn't like the idea of See, these things make a lot of sense if you think about it. All right. So in one word, Mr. Morales, what is Gallatin's suggestion for solving impressment? War. Yeah. Question for you though, Arielle. What is his position? Secretary of the Treasury. So what is his biggest priority? The economy. So of course he doesn't want to use an embargo because, look at you guys holding hands together out there. Holding the past together. What else did you guys hold? Something Napoleon? Freaking Napoleons. Talk to me. Go ahead. You can go by yourself? Yeah, not a Napoleon. Now, what is Jefferson's argument? What should we do? Yeah, use the embargo, right? That this will force other countries to give us some respect. This will force other countries to acknowledge that we're neutral. And then I have, in my opinion, one of the better fluid cartoons of the year. So I'm going to give you just a minute with the person next to you. Just a minute with the person next to you. What is this cartoonist trying to say about the Embargo Act? We have this guy who's trying to get goods out to, what kind of ship do you think this is? A British ship, right? He's trying to sell stuff to the British, and the tax collector is holding him back, not letting him sell his stuff. In 30 Seconds with Parker, what is this cartoon trying to get at in terms of the role of the Embargo Act in society? 1 minute, go. Go.
I don't know, I'm just gonna say.
Damn it, how did you make some? Oh, it's grab. Yeah, the context is easy. Embargo Act, impressments, Napoleonic Wars. 10 seconds. Yeah. You sound that super fun? Alright, so obviously I think the context is pretty straightforward. The context is the Embargo Act and impressment is a problem. Is this cartoon, do you think, pro or anti-Embargo Act? Anti, good. And it's so funny because 1807, they won't even put the word damn in a cartoon. So it's like, damn it, how he nicks them. How he nicks them. They're trying to smuggle, trying to sell stuff to Britain. And who is stopping them? The turtle, the embargo. And he said, oh, this cursed oh grab me. What does oh grab me backwards?
Embargo.
Right? I love watching. You don't have to give away the answer. Let them figure it out sometimes.
Bro, I can't help it.
I know, you get excited. So, I like this cartoon because it's a very clever, intelligent play on words. This cursed oh grab me, this embargo has stopped these businessmen from making their sales. I like it. I think you guys admit it too. It was great. So, go ahead and skip that text on the bottom so I make sure we finish on time, but it's a good text. I encourage you to read it. All it does is say all the reasons why the Embargo Act sucks. Say it's killed our farms, it's killed our commerce, it's killed our trade, it's killed our economy, it's killed everything. But because of the failure of the Embargo Act, anytime something goes wrong in politics, who do Americans blame?
President.
Yeah, the party in charge. So because the Democratic Republicans are responsible for the Embargo Act, Americans blame the Democratic Republicans. Who's that good for? Good job, Stansbury. One of you is paying attention. If Americans are mad at the Democratic Republicans because of the Embargo Act, who benefits? The Federalists. Good. So the Federalists gained some political ground because of this failed embargo. The Federalists are on their last legs. Their little comeback. They think they're coming back, but not. The Republican-dominated Congress cancels the Embargo Act. Cancels the Embargo Act entirely. And the Embargo Act is replaced by, in my humble opinion, the best named law in American history. The Non-Intercourse Act of 1809. The Non-Intercourse Act of 1809, which is just good advice. Right? The only safe sex is no sex. The Non-Intercourse Act of 1809.
No glove, no blood.
No glove, no blood. Which one? Right. Yeah. Kevin Nieto, office for San Francisco. Guys, you gotta finish on me. Come on. Embargo? Sure. The Embargo Act is based on the Non-Intercourse Act. And the Non-Intercourse Act says, all right, the embargo is gone. We're very confused by this Non-Intercourse Act. No. He's not confused. It's pretty straightforward. No intercourse. The Non-Intercourse Act says we won't trade with Great Britain, we won't trade with France, but we'll trade with everybody else. Who's everybody else? Spain, the Dutch. Is that good for trade? No. It's better, but is that going to make the British or the French stop impressing our ships? No. So the Non-Intercourse Act says we'll trade with everybody else. That doesn't work. And then we pass a year later, because that doesn't work, Macone's Bill number 2 of 1810. Now, I've been studying history for like 30 years. And I have no idea what Macone's Bill number 1 is. No clue. No clue. I'm getting my second master's degree in history right now. No idea what Macone's Bill number 1 is. So it doesn't matter. But Macone's Bill number 2 gets rid of all of these embargoes, and it says, we will trade with England or France, whoever respects us as neutrals first. Do you think that works? No. No. Because it's still going to piss the other side off. The other side's still going to impress our stuff. This whole failure demonstrates, the thing I want you to take away, is this whole failure demonstrates how powerless America is on the world stage. Do we matter militarily? No. Do we matter economically? No. Do we think we matter both? Yes, but we don't. But we don't. This is eventually going to lead us in 2 years into a war. We're going to fight the War of 1812 in 1812 against Great Britain, and this will be a lot of justification, is impressment. Well, that's for Thursday. Second to last thing that happened under Jefferson's presidency is, if you remember from our Constitutional Compromise Day, Congress promised to not touch the slave trade for 20 years. Remember that compromise? Well, that 20 years is coming up. 1808 is the first year Congress can do anything about slavery. Because they promised, 1788 was the convention, they promised in exchange for the regulation of interstate commerce, Congress won't touch slavery for 20 years. 2 years before that, December of 1806, before the deadline is there, Jefferson suggests to Congress, hey Congress, why don't we start to figure out what to do about this slavery problem? He proposes maybe gradual emancipation, freeing slaves slowly over time. He proposes things like sending the slaves out to the frontier to have their own civilization and society. And as soon as he, as a Southern slave owner, suggests even doing anything about slavery, what is the South going to do? Freak the hell out. Southerners are furious. They argue against any slavery law whatsoever. In all cases, saying, we're not going to live in this country if slavery is going to be interfered with. And eventually, Congress passes a law in 1808 which outlaws not slavery, not anything except bringing slaves in from Africa. In 1808, America outlaws the Atlantic slave trade, the importation of slaves. Now, this sounds like a good idea, right? Look at America doing the right thing. Agreed? The only reason the South agreed to this is because by now, slavery was such a self-sustaining population that there was no need to import slaves from Africa anymore anyway. They found it easier to just have slaves reproduce and keep them here domestically. So let's talk legacy. His first most important piece of his legacy is expansion. 3 ways. We expand our population. We double our country in size, and our population spreads out significantly into the western frontier of the country. All right, we grow by 2 million people. We double in size. We have a significant expansion as a country under his presidency. Unfortunately, because it kind of goes against his ideology, he strengthens the executive branch by sending the military to the Barbary Pirates, by using the Embargo Act and using the government to enforce it, by buying Louisiana. Jefferson was anti-executive until he was the executive. And then his actions actually strengthened the executive branch of government. So I'd argue would you say one is in line or against with his ideology? In line, yeah, right? He wanted a territorial expansion and his empire of liberty. 2, in line or against? Against, good. 3, the role of the government shrinks. Because of the lack of taxes and the lack of government influence, the role of the government actually gets diminished. In line or against ideology? Good. But he does do a good job of really basing the government on this idea of non-aristocracy, on everyday people being represented in the government, not just the ruling elite. So again, that's in line with this as well. Also part of his legacy is the Federalists will be dead by 1816. We'll see an election in 1816 of James Monroe in which there are no Federalists. So the Federalists are gone, and a lot of that is Jefferson's popularity helps kill the Federalists dead. And he also does what he says and keeps the U.S. out of war. Good. But his biggest legacies don't come from his presidency, with the exception of Manifest Destiny. His biggest legacies come from his contribution to the Revolutionary War. Right? He writes the Declaration of Independence. He writes the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom. He writes a variety of important pieces that argue in favor of independence. And also, he's a big fan of education, he said so. He founds the University of Virginia. To this day, one of the best colleges in the country, one of the best public colleges in the country, is founded with Jefferson's money on Jefferson's land in Virginia, which is a public university and it's fantastic. Oh, you'll see in a second. So, stay with me. This is his gravestone. He got to pick what he wanted on his gravestone. He highlights, here is buried Thomas Jefferson. First thing, author of the Declaration of Independence. That's kind of big. I'd probably start with that too. 2, author of the Statute of Virginia for Religious Freedom, separation of church and state. Pretty big. 3, father of the University of Virginia. Does it mention that he's a president? Does it mention the Louisiana Purchase or the embargo? No. So I think it's important to note that this kind of tells us a lot about what he thinks about his biggest contributions to America have nothing to do with what he does as president, despite the fact that his presidency is quite important. So on the back of your table for the last 4 minutes of class, all of you look at what are his ideals and how does that compare to his actual actions on interpretation, presidential powers, Army and Navy, citizenship, rights of the people, and size of the government. Before you do, I have this amazing political cartoon, or amazing campaign ad, as he's running for president in 1800. There's a rumor that he has fathered illegitimate children with one of his slaves. Turns out the rumor is very, very true. And Jefferson, who owns slaves now today, has a bunch of black descendants who get together every year and have a party, and it's the best shit ever. And so John Adams is accusing Jefferson of having illegitimate black children, about preaching this beautiful ideology about equality, but then owning slaves and having kids with them. And the Adams campaign puts out this awesome campaign poster, which makes me incredibly happy. Yo!
Oh my god. Why is it called that?
Because they're saying he's a philosophic cock. He's a rooster. I don't know what you're talking about. So I apologize. That's our third dick joke of the day after Napoleon and the Non-Intercourse Act. No, that's 3. That's 3 jokes. Go ahead and fill in your chart, please. I made a 4? Oh, that doesn't count. I mean, it's an actual lecture.
Just